I was halfway through the champagne toast when her dad dropped his glass. It didn't shatter. It just hit the floor with a hollow thud, rolled twice, then lay still like it understood something the rest of the room hadn't processed yet. Her mom left seconds later, slipping quietly through the crowd, her heels clicking too fast against the wood floor. But the real noise was in the silence. Dozens of eyes bouncing between me and Emily, like they'd missed a cue in a play and weren't sure if the scene unfolding was comedy, tragedy, or both. I never planned to speak. I wasn't even supposed to be at the mic. I'd come to celebrate her, support her, keep the peace. But when she said it, when she stood up in her new cap and gown, holding her little flute of sparkling wine and laughed, and of course my amazing roommate Jeremy, for always doing the dishes, something in me cracked so loud I'm shocked no one heard it. 3 years. 3 years of being by her side, loving her quietly, privately, in a way that felt sacred, supporting her through night shifts, finals, panic attacks, paying half the rent, sometimes more, holding her hand under blankets when the world outside felt too sharp. I was more than a roommate. But to her, in that moment, I was just background noise. So I stood up. I don't even remember walking to the mic. I remember the feeling, like the air got thick around me. I remember my fingers trembling slightly as I took the glass from the table, not from nerves, but from a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. "Hi," I said, and the crowd turned toward me like a flock of birds pivoting mid-flight. I wasn't planning to say anything, but I guess it's time. Emily was frozen, smiling, lips tight. Her eyes said, "Please don't." But I wasn't angry. Not then. Not yet. I was heartbroken. In that raw, electric way that doesn't feel real until it echoes through your bones. "I met Emily 3 years ago," I said. "I had just gotten out of a bad relationship. I wasn't looking for anything. Neither was she. We were just two people trying to survive grad school in a one-bedroom apartment that never quite had hot water." A couple people chuckled. Emily didn't. We cooked dinner together most nights. We'd watch reruns of Parks and Rec until we fell asleep. She once made me a birthday cake at 2 a.m. because she felt bad for missing my real birthday the week before. I got her through her stats final by basically living on Red Bull and note cards. She held me when I found out my dad had cancer. I looked at her then. Her eyes were glassy, still smiling. "Barely. She's not just my roommate," I said. "She's the person I've loved, truly loved, every day for the last 1,095 days. Quietly, completely, probably stupidly." That's when her dad's glass slipped from his fingers. I kept talking. We didn't put a label on it, not publicly. Her career mattered. Her family had opinions. I got it. I told myself it was enough to love her in the shadows. To be the roommate who showed up with flowers on Tuesdays, who memorized how she takes her coffee, who walked her to class when she couldn't stop crying after her thesis defense. I paused. My voice cracked a little. I didn't care. But tonight, hearing her call me just her roommate, in front of all of you, after everything, it made me realize something. Emily looked like she wanted to disappear. I didn't want to destroy her. That was never the point. I just couldn't swallow it anymore. I think I loved the version of us I made up in my head. The version where we were just taking our time, figuring things out. Where we were on the same page, just reading it at different speeds. I turned back to the crowd, the champagne in my hand now warm and untouched. But you deserve to know the truth. I wasn't her roommate. I was her partner, her best friend, her quiet shadow, the guy behind the camera in all those graduation photos. I raised my glass. To Emily, the smartest, kindest person I've ever known. And to honesty, may we all find it before it's too late. I didn't wait for the toast. I didn't wait for applause. I set the glass down, walked past her dad, who looked like someone had unplugged his soul, past her mom, who I found later had gone to the car to cry. Outside, the night air hit me like a confession. I sat on the curb, hands shaking now, not with clarity, but with the rush of everything I'd kept bottled up for 3 years. The late nights, the quiet, "I love yous," whispered into her sleeping hair. The plans I never dared say out loud. Emily didn't come out right away. I wasn't sure she would. But 20 minutes later, I heard the door creak open. Soft footsteps. Her voice, small. "Jeremy, why did you do that?" I looked up. She wasn't angry. She wasn't crying. She just looked scared. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't rush to soothe her. I didn't reach for her hand. I just looked at her and said, "Because you didn't." She sat beside me, close, but not touching. We stared at the streetlight like it might offer answers. I never wanted to hurt you, she said. I nodded. You just didn't want to claim me. The silence between us was louder than anything I said on that mic. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The door behind us swung open again. Guests were looking for her. Her name floated through the night. She stood, wiped her gown. Please don't hate me, she whispered. I didn't say anything. I just watched her walk away, back into the house, back into her carefully curated life. And that's when I realized I had been a secret for 3 years. But I wasn't anymore. I'd set myself free. The next morning, my phone was a graveyard of unread messages. Texts from Emily, her brother, her best friend Kara, who'd always treated me like a piece of temporary furniture, useful, but not worth investing in. Missed calls, voicemails, a few guilt-ridden "Are you okay?" check-ins from people who hadn't even made eye contact with me the night before. I ignored all of it. Instead, I packed a bag. Just one. Not because I was moving out, not yet, but because I needed space. Time. Distance from the echo of what I'd said, what I finally let myself feel. I spent the day at a friend's cabin about an hour out of town. No Wi-Fi, no mirrors, just trees, wind, and a single armchair that smelled like dust and pine. I sat there for hours, sorting through the invisible wreckage. See, there's something no one tells you about being someone's secret for too long. Eventually, you start believing you deserve to be hidden. That maybe the reason they don't introduce you as their partner, their person, is because you're not enough to be seen. It had taken 3 years to forget who I was before her. One 5-minute toast to remember. Emily didn't call again until sunset, then once more around midnight. And finally, a message. You made a fool of me. That was the first thing she said. Not sorry. Not let's talk. Just that. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then typed. No, you just weren't ready for the truth. She didn't reply. The real unraveling started 2 days later. I came back to the apartment expecting awkward silence. Instead, I walked in to find half the living room stripped bare. Her diploma was gone. Her favorite throw blanket. The quirky coffee mugs we bought in Asheville. She'd left a note on the counter. I'm staying at my parents' for a while. We should talk when you're calm. When I'm calm. That was rich. Still, I didn't tear it up. I just tucked it into the drawer next to the corkscrew and the Polaroids of us pretending to be tourists in our own city. I didn't need to destroy anything to prove I was hurting. The ache spoke for itself. Kara reached out next. Emily's been crying nonstop, she said. She didn't mean to minimize you. She was just scared. Her parents never approved. I almost laughed. Then why was I paying half her tuition and cooking dinner for her dad every Sunday? Kara didn't have an answer. No one did. And yet, I kept replaying that night in my head. Not the speech, not the fallout, but her face when I stood up. That flicker of panic. The tightening of her jaw. The way she looked at me like I'd betrayed her, when all I did was finally stop lying on her behalf. That's when I realized it was never about love. It was about control. She loved me, maybe, in her own way, but she loved being in charge of the story more. As long as I stayed invisible, she could be whoever she wanted. The ambitious daughter, the independent grad student, the untouchable achiever who never needed a man. But that night, I made her choose. And she chose distance. It hurt, deeper than I admitted to anyone, even myself. I'd imagined proposing to her. Had even looked at rings. Once, months ago, she'd mentioned liking vintage emerald cuts. I saved the tab, told myself I had time. But love doesn't die all at once. It bleeds out slowly. And in those long, echoing days without her, I started noticing the spaces where we didn't fit. Her silence when I talked about publishing my novel. The way she flinched when I reached for her hand in public. How her family only ever thanked her when I made the food, set the table, washed the dishes. I thought I was building something. Turns out, I was renting space in someone else's narrative. One evening, about a week after the party, she finally came back. I heard her key in the lock, the soft shuffle of her boots. I didn't get up. Just sat at the kitchen table, eating leftover pad thai and rereading an old letter my dad wrote me before he passed. She stood in the doorway like a stranger. You look tired, she said. I didn't respond. Just took another bite. She sat across from me, arms folded. The silence was a third person at the table. I panicked, she said eventually. I didn't expect you to speak. Why? Her eyes darted. Because we agreed to keep things private. I nodded. Private's not the same as invisible. She sighed, rubbed her temples like I was the one exhausting her. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think you'd care. And there it was, the quiet confession I didn't know I needed. I always cared, I said. I just didn't know I had a shelf life. Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back. I didn't want to lose everything I worked for. I leaned forward. Then maybe you should have built it with someone you weren't ashamed of. That stung. I know it did. She winced, looked down, and for a second, I saw the girl I met 3 years ago, the one with paint on her jeans, who stayed up late ranting about feminism and poetry and climate change. She would have hated the woman who called me her roommate. But time changes people, and not always in sync. She reached into her bag, pulled out a little black velvet box. My heart kicked. Is that? No, she said, opening it. Inside wasn't a ring. It was a key to a studio apartment across town. I think we need space, she whispered. Real space. I'm not ready for all of this. I swallowed. Hard. And I'm not willing to be less than what I am anymore. She nodded. No fight. No tears. Just quiet understanding. She left the key on the table and walked out. That's how 3 years ends. Not with a bang, but with the soft click of a door closing behind the person you thought would stay. It's been 4 months since the toast. Since the glass hit the floor. Since Emily turned and walked back into a life I no longer had a seat in. Sometimes I still find her hair in the dryer lint trap. Sometimes I still wake up reaching for someone who isn't there. But something strange happened after she left. The air in the apartment changed. Lighter. Quieter. More honest. Like the place itself had been holding its breath the whole time and could finally exhale. I started writing again. Not just notes or journal entries. Real pages. Whole chapters. The novel I put on hold the night she told me she needed the desk more than I did. I pulled it out of the closet, dusted off the cover, and started over. And that's when I realized something I should have seen years ago. I stopped growing the moment I started hiding. I thought I was being patient, supportive, humble. But the truth was, I shrank myself to fit into the pocket of her world. I stopped asking for what I needed. Stopped demanding to be seen. Stopped believing I deserved anything more than the scraps of attention she offered in private. The week after she moved out, Kara dropped by, unannounced. She brought a plant, something leafy with a name I couldn't pronounce. She said it was a peace offering. Said Emily wasn't doing great. She's been quiet, Kara said, setting the plant on the windowsill. She misses you. I nodded. I didn't say anything. She told me she loved you, she added. She just didn't know how to do it out loud. And maybe that's true. Maybe Emily did love me. In her own quiet, compartmentalized way. But love that can't stand in the daylight isn't the kind of love I want anymore. 2 weeks later, Emily called. No text. No warning. Just her name lighting up my screen while I sat in the coffee shop near our old campus, editing Chapter 5. I let it ring. Then I picked up. Her voice was soft, hesitant. Hey. I've been thinking about you, she said. A lot. Me too, I said, surprising even myself. But thinking about someone and being able to show up for them aren't the same thing. There was a pause. A long one. I could hear traffic in the background. Maybe she was walking. Maybe she was lost. I made a mistake, she said. I know. I just didn't know how to love you the right way. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch, not to punish her, but to honor how long I'd kept quiet. Finally, I said, you loved me in the way you knew how. But I needed more than that. I needed to be seen, chosen, introduced. I know, she whispered. I wasn't ready to lose everything else. And now, I've already lost you. I looked down at the words on my screen. The scene I'd just written, a character finally leaving the town they'd outgrown. It hit harder than I expected. I'm not angry, I said. I just don't want to go back. Another pause. Then, can I read your book when it's done? I smiled. Maybe. Depends how it ends. She laughed. Just a little. Then said goodbye. Not see you later. Not talk soon. Just goodbye. And this time, I said it back. These days, I'm learning to build a life without waiting for someone else to make space for me in theirs. I write in the mornings. I walk more. I've reconnected with people I let drift during the Emily years. Friends who knew me before I started disappearing into someone else's shadow. The apartment feels different now. I bought a second desk. Not because anyone's moving in, but because I deserve room. The plant Kara brought? I almost killed it twice, but it's still hanging in there. Resilient. like me. And sometimes, on quiet nights, I find myself replaying that toast. Not with regret, not with shame, but with something that feels a lot like pride. Because for once, I didn't wait for someone else to name the truth. I stood up. I spoke. And in doing so, I let myself go. Love is not a secret worth keeping. And I'm not someone you tuck away when the world is watching.